we? What do we come from? Who were they, those who came before us?
We invite you to go with us backward into time on a journey of adventure and discovery, to seek for clues to the forgotten heritage of man, to uncover with us the long-lost secret of the Maya Temple. Our adventure into the past this time will take us to the land of the ancient Maya, who, 1,000 years ago, ruled in splendor over what is now southern Mexico and Guatemala. To guide us on our journey, we have with us one of America's best-known anthropologists, the director of the University Museum of the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Frederick Rainey.
I suppose no civilization has ever vanished, leaving behind it so many unsolved riddles, so many unanswered problems as that of the Maya civilization. We don't know how it began. We don't know how it ended. When the Spaniards conquered Mexico some 400 years ago, their priests destroyed practically all the Maya records as works of the devil. This may or may not have been a blow to the devil, but it certainly was a blow to us anthropologists and historians. We've been sitting up nights trying to piece the story together ever since. All anyone has to do is to look at their buildings and their sculptures to see that they reached a pretty high level of civilization. They were the only American Indians who had developed much beyond picture writing. Some of their books remain to us, like this. In spite of all they achieved, the Maya had no plow. They had no spade. And even though they built fine roads, they never made use of the wheel. Much of their energy was spent in the study of the mysteries of time and in the movement of the stars and the planets. Time was an obsession with them. They actually worshipped it. They covered their monuments and buildings with calendrical reckonings. They carved hundreds of monuments like this, recording their computations, which extended far into the past. On some of these monuments, we find accurate calculations extending over 400 million years. The Maya believed that time periods were burdens to be carried through all eternity by relays of bearers. Each year, for example, had a particular god who bore it, a god who was worshipped and propitiated. Each day or month or year could bring disaster or good fortune, depending upon the god who bore it, whether he was evil or benevolent. Every move they made, from birth until death, was determined by the particular god in ascendancy at the moment. How the Maya ever got anything done under a system like this, it's difficult to see, but they did. They built magnificent cities, temples and palaces of stucco and stone, beautifully decorated. They placed their buildings on towering step pyramids.
Uxmal and Copan, Tikal and Huacactun and Chichen Itza were as splendid in their architecture as Babylon or Nineveh, or the fabled cities of ancient Egypt. As a matter of fact, Maya cities were not really cities at all. They were simply ceremonial centers, pyramided temples and palaces surrounding immense plazas. These plazas were deserted, except on market days or days sacred to religion. Then, high up on the terraces above the people, priests would stage their fearful rituals, sometimes offering up human victims to appease the gods and to overawe the peasants. The Maya had a peculiar way of building their temples, one over another, covering the first with a pyramid, then building a new temple on top of that, and so on. Sometimes a single pyramid is found to contain 3 or 4 others nested inside. Most of the Maya cities and the finest of their stone carvings were created within a 500-year period of tremendous activity and progress. And then, mysteriously, it all came to an end. In one city after another, building stopped almost overnight. When Maya history resumed, generations later, invaders had taken over. This new civilization lasted 4 more centuries. Then, gradually, temples and pyramids fell into decay. The jungle crept over the dead cities. For 900 years, the world forgot that the Maya had ever existed. What explains the collapse of the early civilization? For a long time, it was believed that the people migrated. Their land was worn out, so they abandoned their cities and farms and moved north to clear new land and build new cities. More probably, it was a revolt of the peasants against their masters, the priests and the nobles. With the death of the educated classes, building stopped, religion declined, and the civilization died. In time, the proud Maya became the patient, burden-bearing Indian of today.
And then there is the question of where the Maya came from. Most authorities are now inclined to agree that their very ancient ancestors, like those of the other American Indians, originally came from Asia across Bering Straits. There are people in Southeast Asia who built their temples on pyramids, not unlike the Maya. Then, of course, there are, in the Near East, the Sumerians and the Egyptians, who built pyramids some 3,000 years before the Maya. Is this just a coincidence, or is there some connection? The Egyptians built their pyramids as tombs, while, of course, the Maya never did. Or did they? In archaeology, the last word is never said. Take, for example, the recent dramatic discovery made at Palenque in southern Mexico.
Palenque is a Maya city that flourished for centuries in ancient times. Then it died and was forgotten, completely. It lay hidden in the jungle until about 200 years ago. Though it was one of the first of the Maya cities to be discovered in modern times, only a small part of it has yet been hacked out of the jungle. So far, archaeologists have uncovered several fine temples and a large palace with many courtyards. Many of the buildings contain superb stone carvings. Dominating the main quadrangle at Palenque is an immensely high pyramid, capped with a building called the Temple of the Inscriptions, because its inside walls are partly covered with priestly computations. Only in recent years has a grant of Rockefeller funds made it possible for the Mexican government to begin clearing and excavating in earnest at Palenque. To take charge of the work at Palenque, the government picked one of Mexico's ablest archaeologists, Dr. Alberto Ruz. From the very beginning of operations, Dr. Ruz had been fascinated by the Temple of the Inscriptions. Because of its height and because of the fact that it had never been explored, he felt sure that down inside, something interesting might be found. Others before Dr. Ruz had been impressed by the towering bulk of the pyramid. They had suspected that it might contain some surprises, but before there had been no funds to work with. Particularly interesting to Dr. Ruz was the floor of the temple, made of stone slabs, not of stucco as in the other Maya temples. In one of these slabs, there were some mysterious holes fitted with stone plugs. Archaeologists had been puzzling over these for years. Every archaeologist is at least half detective, eternally looking for the little clues that will break the case, like the cigarette butts murderers are always leaving behind them in the whodunits.
Maybe they were to hold incense.
Or to hold ropes for lifting.
Perhaps.
But if that were so, wouldn't there be some place overhead for some block and tackle arrangement?
Is there?
No. Caramba, ¿qué es esto?
What is it?
Let me have your trowel. Look, that wall. It doesn't stop at the floor. It goes on down past.
You think there's another pyramid down under?
Not with this construction. There's something odd here. Something I don't understand. Juan! ¡Sube con tu gente! Sí, señor. ¡Vénganse!
What's up?
We're going under this floor to see what's there.
When you read about an archaeologist stumbling across some buried treasure somewhere, you can be sure of one thing. The stumbling was the end result of a lot of knowledge, a lot of shrewd deduction, a lot of good, hard work, and very little luck. The treasure that turns up may not always be what he's looking for, but it is no accident that he found it. What Alberto Ruz came across when he dug under the floor of his Maya temple was not the lower-level temple that might have been expected. It was something absolutely new among Maya discoveries. A secret stairway leading down inside the pyramid.
It's obviously heading away from the center of the pyramid. It could be an underground passage to some building nearby.
All that trouble to block it off. I don't think it's just a passageway. There's something down underneath there. They didn't want anyone to find.
Could it lead to some secret sanctuary?
Perhaps it's a fire escape.
Whoever had set out to block off the stairway, for whatever purpose, had done a good job of it. Dr. Roos's men had to hack their way down, step by step, through a mixture of rock and rubble that time and dampness had welded into an almost solid mass. In the 10 weeks before the rainy season put a stop to work, the crew was able to uncover only 23 steps. The next season was even tougher. The deeper they went, the damper it became, and the more solidly lime and water had bound the rubble together. That season, again, they did only 23 steps. Then the staircase turned back on itself, toward the center of the pyramid. So it was definitely not a passage to another building. Spadeful by spadeful, they were digging towards some secret. A secret that had been kept for 1,000 years. Before the third season was over, they reached a level corridor, and at its end, they came upon a grim discovery. Into one small stone coffer were crowded the skeletons of 6 people, sacrificed by the Maya priests to guard this place through eternity.
Somebody of high rank. Look, the head, purposely deformed. The teeth, filed.
But there was something else. In a wall, beside the coffer, was a great triangular block of stone, slightly ajar. The door to the secret of the temple. What is it inside an archaeologist that drives him out to the end of nowhere, to live in unbearable discomfort, to accept hard work, isolation, and even danger? It is the hope that comes to every one of them, every time he starts digging, that this time he may hit the jackpot. Some discovery, some bit of evidence that will tell him something about the past no one has known before.
Por favor, muchachos.
1,000 years of dripping lime had transformed the chamber, but the carvings on its walls were still as magnificent as the day they were finished. Whatever the room was for, it must have had some extraordinary significance. Almost filling up the center of the chamber was an immense stone slab, intricately and beautifully carved, one of the most important works of art ever uncovered among Maya ruins.
Superb. I don't think I've ever seen an altar like this before.
Perhaps it is not an altar.
What else could it be?
Perhaps the cover of a sarcophagus.
That's impossible. Look at the size of that slab. It couldn't have come down those narrow steps.
What if the whole structure was built as a tomb?
But we know that the Maya never built their pyramids as tombs.
In our field, it's never safe to say never.
Jacking up the slab was laborious, careful work. Always in Dr. Roos's mind was the risk of breaking it. But it was a risk worth taking, for underneath might lie something more important still.
Listo. Cuatro. Listo. Cinco. Listo.
All known facts about the Maya and their ways contradicted Dr. Roos's theory that this huge slab was the cover to a sarcophagus, that this chamber and the pyramid within which it lay were built to entomb the remains of some great Maya personage.
Listo. Doce. Listo. Trece. Listo. ¡Cuidado! ¿Qué pasó ahí? ¡Que no pusieron los calces! ¡Más cuidado! ¡Listo! 1. ¡Listo! 2. ¡Listo! 3. ¡Listo!
If Dr. Roos were right, every lift of the jacks might be bringing him closer to the heart of an ancient riddle. Why the Maya built their pyramids.
¡Listo! 8. Voy a batir. Your flashlight. The body is there.
This was the secret of the Maya temple. All that time had left of some forgotten Indian who, in his day, had been great and powerful. 1,000 years ago, he had been buried here, his body richly decked in jewelry of jade, more valuable than diamonds or platinum to the Maya. Any day, in the National Museum of Mexico City, you can see what he must once have looked like. They have reconstructed the body as it was when he was buried. The scattered jewelry has been reassembled. The jade mask, which had fallen to pieces, has been put together. And so he lies there again, as the last man who looked upon him must have seen him on that day 10 centuries ago when they closed the sarcophagus. To you and to me, a curiosity to wonder at for a moment. But to archaeologists, more, much more.
To the archaeological world, this discovery by Dr. Roos is one of the jackpots of recent years. It takes us one step nearer the elusive truth. His discovery has shown that at least in one case, the Maya built a pyramid over a tomb much like the Egyptians. It does this demonstrate a connection between the Egyptians and the Maya, between the old and the new world. Perhaps not, but someday, someone, somewhere, may find another clue, and then we will know, and we will have established one more fact in the fascinating detective story